Hey guys, this is Punisher911 and this is my review of Sniper Elite V2. Sniper Elite V2 is a cover-based third-person shooter set in the final days of World War II and is the successor to the 2005 title Sniper Elite. In Sniper Elite V2 you play as Carl Fairburn, an American sniper inserted into Berlin, where he must eliminate the scientists who worked on the V2 rocket program to prevent them from falling into the hands of the Soviets. So, first things first, let's look at the combat, or more specifically, the bullet camera. Sometimes when you fire a killing shot from your sniper rifle, the bullet cam activates, where you watch the bullet travel through the air and into your target. Sometimes it ends with the bullet impacting into the target, but occasionally it'll go into the X-ray vision mode, where you see what the bullet does to the target's innards. Bones shatter, organs are punctured, skulls fracture. It can get pretty damn brutal. And it can also be pretty rewarding to eliminate an enemy soldier or sniper who's been giving you a bit of trouble and you receive that X-ray vision. Now if you want to change how often the bullet camera activates, you can go into the game options and change it to either minimal, reduced, normal or increased, which is a nice option for people who don't want it to activate all the time. And that's something I noticed as I played through the game, and I had the frequency set to normal. There were a few times where the bullet cam was activating perhaps a little bit too often. I remember one part in particular where it activated over 5 times in a row, and I felt it was a little bit excessive. And as I got into the later stages of the game, the bullet camera and the X-ray vision just started to get a little bit old for me because of the frequency. So I recommend that you do reduce the frequency in the options so the bullet cam still retains some of its impact and you don't get oversaturated with the X-ray vision. One thing I did notice during the bullet cam mode is that the bullets seem to have their own little laws of physics. There was one moment where I fired a shot and the bullet was travelling to the target's leg, but just prior to impact the bullet somehow jumped up a couple of inches and hit the grenade on his belt, which caused it to explode, which I found kind of amusing and just plain weird. But all in all, the bullet cam can get old later in the game if you have the frequency set too high, but ultimately it is one of the better features of the game. In addition to the bullet camera, this game also features bullet ballistics, such as bullet drop and wind correction, forcing you to aim left or right of the target and also compensate for the bullet drop. And for a sniping game, I reckon this is a really nice element. Now on the easy difficulty, there's no bullet ballistics, no bullet drop, no wind correction. On medium difficulty, there is bullet drop, but no wind correction, and on hard difficulty it has both the bullet drop and the wind correction. But one of the cool things with this game is you can customize the difficulty. So if you want easier enemies but still want the full bullet ballistics, you can do that, and I reckon that is a pretty cool feature, allowing players to customize the difficulty to their own personal preferences. Moving on to the more general gameplay, you have 3 weapons, a rifle, a submachine gun and a pistol. Now even though you have a submachine gun, don't expect to run and gun, because you only start each mission with a very small amount of ammunition and extra ammo can be pretty scarce. So for the most part, you'll be using your pistol for close range and the rifle for nearly everything else, and only use the submachine gun when stuff really starts getting hectic. In addition to your guns, you have a variety of different items. You have 2 types of grenades, landmines, trip mines and dynamite, which you can use to set up traps, and you can also use some of them to cover your flanks. However, I found the majority of the items kind of useless, except for the trip mines. The dynamite and the landmines I never used, and I only used the grenade once, which led to me getting killed, because the character has to step completely out of cover in order to throw them. And you also get rocks, which you can apparently distract enemy soldiers with them, but I never used them, I just shot them. Something else that makes the traps a bit useless is the fairly linear level design, which doesn't give the enemy soldiers a lot of opportunities to get around behind you, and even if there is a way to get to you, I found that the AI seems to prefer shooting at you from a distance instead of getting up close and personal. So while you have a number of items available, I'm not sure that they're all necessary. Maybe on the easy difficulties you could stuff around and have a bit of fun with them, but if you're playing on the harder difficulties, it's just easier to use the guns. Now I've seen some criticisms of the cover system and how the movement of the character feels off. I didn't have any issues with the movement, and for the most part the cover system worked well enough, apart from the whole grenade issue I just mentioned, although there were a few occasions where I got stuck on terrain, usually at really bad times in combat, which resulted in me getting killed. That's something that was kind of annoying. The only real issue I had with the cover system was it got a little bit picky over what I could and could not take cover behind. And there were a few times where I was under pretty heavy fire and tried to take cover behind a chest-high object, but the game didn't recognise it as cover, so I got killed there too. So in short, the cover system is alright, but it could use a little bit of fine-tuning. Let's move on to the artificial intelligence. The AI in Sniper Elite is a little bit of a mixed bag. There are times where the enemy can be really deadly, and there's other times where they're surprisingly thick. To give you an example, if you're in a room and there are some enemy soldiers in a room next to you, you can usually shoot one of them with a silenced pistol, and the rest of them will usually go, "What's that?" and slowly walk in single file through the doorway, allowing you to just knock them off one at a time. Even as they're seeing their own comrades get killed, they'll just walk into your line of fire. But there are other times, usually outside, where they can spread out and give each other covering fire and never allow you to get a clear shot. And this inconsistent tone carries over to the accuracy of the enemy weapons as well. Snipers and riflemen can be deadly accurate, which is alright, but soldiers that use submachine guns can hit you from a pretty damn long distance. But guys who use the MG42 machine gun, they basically act like automatic shotguns and can't hit anything at all, which is a little bit weird because when you jump on the MG42, it's pretty damn accurate. So the AI is really unpredictable at best. Now I do have some criticisms for Sniper Elite, the first being that for a game that's all about sniping, I was expecting a heavier focus on the stealth aspect of the game. Now there's a cool little feature that allows you to mask your shots by firing during loud noises such as explosions, but those events I found were far too few to rely on, and most of it just comes down to finding something to hide behind and start blasting until everyone's dead. In fact, there are several points in the game that outright force you to go in guns blazing, such as one of the final missions in the game where you have to prevent the launch of one of the V2 rockets. The objective tells you to kill the base commander, so I snuck up behind him and took him out silently. Then the objective said, defend yourself as the rocket prepares for launch. So I got to a vantage point and sat there waiting for the launch to begin. And I didn't know how long I sat there for, but it was quite a considerable amount of time, and nothing was happening. So I thought maybe the game glitched. I restarted the checkpoint, once again eliminated the commander silently, and went back to the vantage point. And once again sat there waiting for something to happen. But it turns out you have to alert the entire base to your presence before the rocket starts to launch, and that struck me as a little bit silly. The second issue is, in two of the later levels, there is a significant and unexpected difficulty spike. For the most part of the game, you're just going against enemy soldiers who may be backed up by the occasional sniper, and every now and then they'll throw a tank at you just to mix things up a little bit. However, in one level, you start off eliminating some basic enemies, then you make your way to a courtyard where you face a tank, as well as a fairly decent amount of soldiers. But after you defeat all of them, you then have to face a team of enemy snipers. And if you're playing on the hard difficulty like I was, these guys are deadly. There's about half a dozen of them, and because the level is set in a bombed out city, they're very well hidden. In addition to that, their rate of fire and their reaction speed is pretty damn fast, so in some cases even poking your head out for a split second can get you killed, and because of this, killing the snipers basically becomes a game of trial and error, and even going up against them can be a bit of a roll of the dice as to who shoots first. But the worst thing about it is after you finally defeat the sniper team, the level ends and you're patting yourself on the back for a job well done. The next level starts, and then it throws another sniper team at you, just in case you weren't frustrated enough. And at that stage my attitude towards the game changed from, this is pretty challenging, to, this is feeling kind of cheap and annoying. Now to be completely fair, I did go back and play those two levels on the easier difficulties, and those snipers posed very little threat. I managed to knock them off without dying at all. But if you're playing on the hard difficulty, expect a significant difficulty spike when you hit them snipers. Now, I don't have a problem with the game being difficult, but I believe it could have been a more gradual build up in difficulty, because the game's pretty easy for most of the way through, and then all of a sudden, bang, it just jumps out of nowhere. And what baffles me the most is after you finish those 2 levels, the difficulty just drops back down to where it was earlier. So it comes across as a little bit inconsistent. By this stage you're probably wondering why I haven't mentioned the game's plot yet. Well, that's because I basically summed it up at the start of the video. You're in Berlin to locate and eliminate a handful of scientists who worked on the V2 rocket program, and destroy any V2 rockets that you find. That's it. Now, in one part of the game they do try to add a story element by making one of the scientists a friendly, but that begins and ends within the exact same level. So for the most part, you're just completing mission objectives. Now, if you're interested in multiplayer, this game does have multiplayer as well as co-op. For multiplayer, there are 4 modes: Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, Distance King, and Team Distance King. Now, I'm sure Deathmatch doesn't need an explanation at this point, but in Distance King, when you make a kill, the distance of the kill is recorded, and at the end of the game, all of your kill distances are totaled up, and whoever has the longest overall distance is the winner, which, for a sniping game, I think it fits in rather well. One thing I'll say for the multiplayer is it's one of the few cover-based shooters where people actually seem to use the cover. When I was playing online, I saw a few people try to run around with a submachine gun. They were spotted and killed pretty quickly, and I was playing a team deathmatch, and there was a lot of tense scenarios where a sniper was trying to get someone on the enemy team, but he was being watched by someone else. And it created this real, I guess, cat and mouse scenario, which I found to be quite cool. Now, for cooperative play, there are 4 modes available. The first is Overwatch. One player is a sniper and the other is a spotter. The spotter only has a submachine gun and a pistol, basically close range weaponry, and they have to spot targets for the sniper, and they also have to go down and complete objectives. And the sniper has to eliminate all the resistance, as well as providing covering fire for the spotter as they complete their objectives. The second mode is Bombing Run. Players have to find spare parts to repair a vehicle so they can escape an incoming bombing run. These missions are on a time limit. The third mode is Kill Tally. This is basically Horde mode, and you defend yourself against waves of enemy soldiers. And the fourth mode, which I think will be the most popular, is Campaign Co-op. You can play through the entire single player campaign in cooperative with a friend, and I reckon that is pretty damn cool. So what's the final verdict? I give Sniper Elite V2 a 7 out of 10. It's a good little game, and I had quite a bit of fun with it. It does have some noticeable flaws with some of the features, like the traps that don't see a lot of use, and you can get tired of the board camera and the X-ray vision if it plays too often. But as I said earlier, thankfully you can turn the frequency down. The campaign consists of 10 missions, and I'd say on average it will take you about 5 to 6 hours to get through it, depending on your difficulty settings. But even after you finish the single player, the co-op modes are definitely worth checking out, and they'll keep you going for a while longer. One word of warning though, I have heard some people say the console versions don't have as many online modes and elements. I can't confirm or deny that because I've reviewed the PC version, but that is something you might want to consider before making a purchase. The current price on Steam is $50, which I think is a decent price. I've seen some stores selling it for more. I've seen one store sell it for $70, but I'd say $50 is the maximum price you should pay. It's a decent game, but not worth putting a hole in your wallet for. So there you go guys, Sniper Elite V2 receives a solid 7 out of 10. I'll see you guys later. This is Punisher 911, over and out.